Welcome to our weekly book club episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I am your host, Meagan, and my bibliophile co-host is...
Hi, I'm Amanda.
Welcome. And yes, together we host a book club podcast. We read the books. You can too if you want to. And then we show up here on Thursdays and we discuss it. But if you never touch the book, that's A-okay with us. We do not judge.
Absolutely correct. We do not. Where we do draw a firm line in the sand, though, is when it comes to human rights. We aren't the can't we just agree to disagree type when it comes to human rights. The world is like truly going to hell in a handbasket right now. And for better or worse, definitely worse in my opinion, the US is like leading the charge on that. So now
you like to be number one at everything. So,
it's true. The number one at being the worst. So, right now is like so not the time to be wishy-washy about your belief system. And for that reason, we do include like a basic belief statement in our episodes.
Yeah. I mean, I was asked to sign statements of faith for my kids as homeschoolers to be in an improv troupe or to be on a swim team. So it isn't that foreign of a concept in the homeschool world. What is harder to find in the homeschool world are people who will stand up and say, I affirm that Black Lives Matter. I 100% believe that no human being is illegal. This is my body, and what I do with my body, my damn choice, right? And so many other things that seem to be regressing as we record this episode. So if you are in the sea of homeschoolers and you're just like, this is one whacked out pool of people, there are progressives among us. And we are a pretty big group, actually. So you have found your people.
Yeah, true story. And in fact, this episode will air on the 5-year anniversary of John Lewis's passing. And there are hundreds, possibly thousands, of Good Trouble protests and community actions scheduled across the country today. Now, because I personally live in a big metropolitan area, we have a lot of options, and I'm still not positive which event we're going to join. But if you're in SoCal or if you're in South Florida and you see either Meagan or I at one of the Good Trouble events today, please make sure you pop over and say hi. We'd love to say hi.
I did try to convince Astrid to make me a handmaid's robe before Thursday, but it's about 7,000 freaking degrees in South Florida right now. And Astrid was like, you're going to die on the ground before you accomplish any sort of political statement. I'm like, okay, that's true, right? Yeah. So I too am undecided. One of our events is a candlelight vigil for democracy at Mar-a-Lago, which feels very appropriate, but also feels very dangerous. So I am undecided if I'm going to go safe route and go to the library where there's a protest or do the Mar-a-Lago one, because I feel like it's going to draw a lot of MAGA people, and goodness only knows what the orange lunatics response will be to all of that. And they're going to be flying the Trump baby balloon and the whole thing. So I'd really like to go to that one, but I'm not so sure if I'm going to be safe taking my kids there. So undecided at this point. But back to book club. We've been on a bit of a theme this last month with our book club selections, and we are starting a new book, but continuing with the same theme. So we will remind you that we are a secular podcast, but even in a secular homeschool, your kids are going to ask questions like, what happens when we die? Or who is this Jesus guy I keep hearing about? True story, and to me. And those questions can be hard to answer if you aren't churchgoers, if you are sifting through your own religious trauma or whatever else, right? Like those are just hard questions to answer in general, right? Like what happens when we die? No one knows. I mean, right? I mean, no one's done it. And back to share their story. There are plenty of people who claim to have, but I don't know. So they're hard questions to answer.
Yeah. And most people, I mean, I'm totally fine with being like, you become worm food. It's fine.
Yeah.
But most people are not like at the point where they just really want to tell their kid that, like that could cause nightmares. So anyway, we just finished reading a bunch of books by David McAfee. I think that's how he pronounces his name, and Chuck Harrison about faith, beliefs, and religion. They are definitely not Christian books, but they are great for introducing the topic of Christianity and other world religions. And why we believe things and how we've gotten to that point, just in general, in a really good secular academic way. It's a series of 3 books. We just wrapped them up. I really recommend going back and listening. I think we both highly recommend using it with your kiddos. It's kind of written for like an 8 to 12 age range, but we agreed that depending on how much support you are providing and how much supplementing you are doing, you could totally do it with 5-year-olds and you could do it with teenagers as well. Like it's just a great like jumping off point, really good for lots of deep thought and deep conversations and critical thinking around a lot of things. Now we are moving on to some of the Annabelle and Aiden book series. And so this is an interesting one because they get recommended in homeschool groups all the time for, again, a secular approach to really big topics, but they look like children's picture books. So we're going to be covering 2 of these picture books from the series today. We're going to do 2 more next week. We've got Oh, the Things We Believed and Oh My Gods. But I don't know about you. Do you feel like they're children's picture books?
Well, so we took a different approach this week, right? And we each did one. And then,
Yep.
so I did one and Amanda did one. And I did Oh, the Things We Believed. And I freaking loved this book. Like, I loved it. I did feel like it was, to your point, it looks like something you would read to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, but you would need to explain a lot. And I think a lot of it would go over their heads and they would just be like, look, it's a dragon, right? Like that would be the,
Yeah.
I don't think they'd get a ton out of it. But I mean, as an adult, I loved it. It was beautifully written. I thought it was up there for me with books like On the Night You Were Born and Harold and the Purple Crayon, where they had this beautiful writing style and arc to them and like a deeper message that came with them. I loved it. So, but yeah, I totally don't think it's little kid stuff. I mean, could you read it to a little kid? Yeah, but I don't think they're going to absorb a ton of it or understand a ton of it. I think they would love the illustrations.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I was thinking like, I do think you could start reading it as like just a fun picture book because it's got like a great rhyme and it's got really pretty pictures and all of that kind of thing. So if you are, a progressive secular homeschooler and you want to pick up this whole series and read kind of like the high level, just rhyming parts and look at the pictures starting from a really young age as like a picture book kind of thing, you could totally do that. But I do feel like it's deceptive, much like kind of Beast Academy, right? You see all the time in Facebook groups, people are like, oh, your kiddo doesn't like math. Like, you should try Beast Academy. It's written like a comic book. They'll love it. And it's that thing like, well, it is, but it's incredibly dense. It's incredibly rigorous. Like, just because the style is there doesn't mean that it's like super fun and easy to do. Like, it's pretty intense. And I feel like these books are the same way. Like, it doesn't look like you could use them with a middle schooler or a high schooler, but if you were actually reading all of the information, you 100% could. Before we decided to do these, I started with Sapiens, which we're actually going to talk about next week. But I'm still not all the way through it because every time I pick it up, I'm like, there's so much stuff. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know about that. And I go like down a rabbit hole, like reading about it or like, oh my gosh, like what? And like, it takes me ages to get through each page. Like that's not a normal children's book. I promise I'm capable of reading faster than that.
To your point, like just because of the format, right? I mean, Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 are graphic novels. They won a Pulitzer Prize, right?
Yeah.
They're incredibly well written and just, oh my God, they're just unbelievable books. You wouldn't hand them to the same kid that you're going to hand. What's the horror book?
Man.
I was thinking that the histories one, Nathan Hale. Who was it? Nathan?
Yep. Hazardous Tales. Yeah.
Yes,
Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales. Yep.
I bought one of those for Liam one time, not realizing it was a graphic novel, and he does not graphic novel. And I'm not discounting graphic novels at all, but he does not. And he was like, this is not a real book. And that is not my perspective. If your child only reads graphic novel, that's amazing. I'm thrilled they found something that jives for them. Yeah. There's some awesome ones out there, but my child, no. Yeah. But yeah, like you wouldn't hand Mouse to the same kid that you give, something about World War II that was hazardous
Yeah.
tales. So just because it's graphic novel or just because it's picture book, same concept, I guess, right? I mean,
Yeah.
really, there's that Shel Silverstein book. Have you ever read the ones, The Missing Piece and The Missing Piece Meet the Big O? Have you read those? Those are like my favorite. So it will take me too long to describe both of them, but like The Missing Piece meets the Big O. The missing piece is like trying to find his whole, and then he finds a big O, and they kind of roll. I know. I am sorry, you read too much smut. I can't say that around you, can I?
Sorry, I was trying to keep a straight face. Thinking the other episode earlier this week that I was like, oh man. And I used all of my restraint and self-control on that one. And now I just can't
do it anymore. Okay. It's a giant circle. Okay. This is why we have an explicit rating. The missing piece is like a door wedge. It looks like something you'd stick under a door wedge, right? And so when he finds the big O, and the big O just rolls because he's a circle. And so the missing piece starts like very clumsily like lifting himself up and flopping himself over to hang out with the big O. And as he does, his rough edges like sand down, and then he can roll too because now he's a little O and big O's. You keep your little O. You big. And so like through persistence, he realizes he no longer needs to find the rest of his whole. I know it's like whole meaning, but that he is complete on his own, right? And so it's the same thing. It's like that's a picture book, but like the majority of kids wouldn't get that message. It would take a while for kids to kind of really get that message and a lot of explaining. And then when you just turned it into like softcore porn, that's definitely not for kids. You should get it from the library. The Missing Piece is the first one, and The Missing Piece Meets the Big O. That's the legit title of the book. And it's the second one, and they're both amazing.
And they're in my romantasy. No, on the children's section. Okay.
It's kiddie porn, but not the kind like you would find on a Republican senator's hard drives.
Is that?
Oh my gosh, I'm warm. It might be a hot flash. Could be because we're at my parents' house and they keep the air conditioning at like 80 degrees. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna lose like 5 pounds here this week. It's gonna be great. Okay, so if you're not watching this one on video, that's totally fine. But we do put up video on Spotify and YouTube and stuff like that. And I really would love to hold the book up and show some pages. So I will do that. Even if you listen to the whole episode somewhere, maybe just like note the time and be like, oh, at 12 minutes, I'm going to pop onto YouTube and see what it looks like or something like that. Right. But the cover, right. You can look up the cover online, obviously, but it is the artistry is just beautiful. I absolutely love it. And then there's just, to me, so many things in this book that are like rule breakers for books. So to Amanda's point, and I'll see if I can hold it up so you can see it. So she was saying you could just read the main points, which are the rhyming parts. So that's these dark bits of text that you see here. But then it almost looks like grayscale kind of faded into the background. There's additional text, which again, if you're watching, you can see it here. But it looks like it's like old newspaper print in the back, that somebody used newspaper to write something in a Sharpie. And you've got a little bit of that newspaper print coming from the back. And the newspaper print is not written in rhyme. And it is facts and context and deeper meaning and deeper discussion beyond the actual story of itself. And it goes back to what we talked about with the last book series about belief systems, right? And why do people believe the things that they believe? And it talks about creation. It talks about the giant turtle that holds the world on its back, which we talked about in the last book series as well. So it brings up a lot of the same points, but in an entirely different way than the last book series that we just read. So I think too, they might each appeal to different types of kids. Like my youngest kid would not like this level of information at all. He would be like, this is far too coded. I would like to learn the information. I would like to see it in front of my face. I don't want to have to hunt and peck on a page to find information in faded font. This would not suit him. But I thought it was freaking brilliant.
I will say I agree with that. Again, I do really like it. I think it's amazing that it's packed with information, but I definitely struggle with being able to take in all of the information the way that it's presented, which is why it takes me a long time to get through these specific books. I think my kiddo would be much better, right? Because he has a different style. And we talked about that, right? Like he can take in a lot of different things and he loves podcasts and, and so I think it just kind of depends on where you fall on that spectrum.
And I put, to the same point that you brought up earlier, I put in my notes for today that you could read this book a dozen times and still find things that you've missed before, or still receive the message in slightly different ways than you have previously. There is so much in this book. The first time I read it, I was focusing mainly on the bold text that was the rhyming, lyrical, information. Then I was like, okay, I need to really dig into this faded background font, right? And then I was focusing so hard on those things that I felt like I wasn't giving the graphics enough of my attention. And so I felt like I had to kind of do each page multiple times in order to even soak in part of what's there, because it's, I don't know, 20, 25 pages, something.
It's not too
and
many
yet
pages.
So much stuff is in here that you could spend a week digging into the symbolism and all the pictures and the artistic style. The artistic style will change tremendously too. So I'll show them on screen. There were 2 pages that were kind of darker in nature that talk about different aspects of Earth and creation and outer space and things like that. And then the very next page is incredibly bright and sunny, and it's a green sunny day with grass and blue skies. So even just the symbolism behind that, those aren't accidents. There's a meaning and there's an intention behind that. And just kind of going through that with your kiddos and talking through that would be an activity in and of itself. I like the fact that, and I don't know if your book had this, the one that you covered for this week, Amanda, but I have a sideways page, okay, here we go. It's like a centerfold. Okay.
I didn't take us there. It's purely the material. It's not my fault.
I was discussing a Shel Silverstein book and you
made it pretty. It's the world we're in. You find your joy where you can find it.
Well, this book has a sideways. You have a sideways centerfold too?
I don't actually.
You don't. You're missing out.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's really cool. At one point in the story, Aiden, I was going to say one of the main characters. And then I'm like, first of all, that's my kid's name. And second of all, it's like one of the names of the series. You'd think I could remember the kid's name. So at one point, the kid gets frustrated about something to do with the context of the book, and he goes kind of stomping off, and he falls off the edge of a cliff, which isn't as tragic as it sounds. And he kind of has there's kind of this Alice in Wonderland spiral that happens where he goes into this funnel. And it's really cool because there's a line at the bottom, at the very, very bottom of the funnel that says things we know. And then there's all this stuff that's up above it. And it's got all these questions for things that we don't know, like how do birds know their way south? Or maybe not. I mean, I know some scientists know the answers to these things, but a child might not know the answers to some of these things. How do cats purr? What is dark energy, dark matter? How does our physical brain create consciousness? Why do cows face north or south when eating? I didn't know that was a thing. Although I do know that dogs typically try to face north when they poop. So I guess it's the same concept. And so Aiden is kind of falling down through this spiral of knowledge. And I just love, like, when was the last time you read a book where you opened it up and one of the pages all of a sudden just goes in a completely different direction? Like, I love the fact that it was like nothing was off the table when they created this book. It was like, how do we typically tell stories to kids? Let's do none of that. Well, I suppose they did do some of that because they've got rhyming text in black font. But then the rest of it is a completely different approach. And so I thought that it was fantastic. And to Amanda's point, because I typically read on Kindle just because we're not in the US most of the time. And she was like, you cannot get this book on a Kindle. We tried it. It's a disaster. And so I ordered the physical book. And yeah, there is no way on this earth you could possibly enjoy this book digitally. You have to get the actual book. So it worked out timing wise that I was in the US and could order them because this was an amazing read. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Let me see. Did I hit all my notes? I think I did.
There might be like a digital version or something that you could pull up on like a full computer screen that you could look at. But we tried it on Kindle because I think some of them might be Kindle Unlimited. And I mean, my kiddo was like, I can't read this. And he's got kid vision. So I was like, I don't, let me see that. And then I try and I was like, oh, freaking, you're right. Not that. You buy those. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say, I'm guessing that they do the other layout in all of the books because mine has it. It's not as exciting as the one in your book. I really like the one in your book and the way that it has the funnel and the falling off the cliff and all of that. Mine is just showing like above the ground and then caves below ground. But it's
Like
still
sideways
like,
page was cool last time. Let's do that again. But we don't
yeah,
have as big of an idea. Who cares? We'll do it anyway.
it'll still be interesting. Okay, so we're going to cover the next book in just a minute. But before we do that, we do just want to give a quick reminder. We're going to have another week, maybe two, of doing our regular book club episodes here, like we have been doing. And then we'll be taking a little bit of a break. We're probably going to kind of re-release a really popular book that we had before. And our live book club is going to move over to Patreon. We've been talking about this for a little while. So if you somehow missed it, starting in September, we're going to be doing a live book club over in Patreon. It will be a membership level. There's a really affordable book club only membership level. And then it's also included in like our top tier where you get all of the live meetings and all of that jazz. So if you want to join at that level, go for it. But it's going to be great. We're going to meet a couple times a month. You can read if you want. You still will not be required to read because I'm all about not making people read for book club. If you want to, by all means, go for it. But you can just come and hear, and then that way you can have an informed opinion about whatever. And the first one we're doing actually is about AI and education. So I think that's going to be some really good conversations because I think it's coming, right? There's no stopping that bus. And so I think it's going to be a really good combo. So yeah, we hope you meet us over there.
I think it's going to be good.
All right. So I went ahead and covered the book, Oh My Gods. It's technically, Oh My Gods, A History of Belief. I thought it was interesting because, again, like Meagan said, it covers stuff that we already covered with the other series, but in like a super, super different way. And we already covered this when we were talking about the books in general and Meagan's book, but this book has more of that fine print. And, it's kind of faded and whatever. And I'm pretty good eyesight, but I'm going to tell you, I was like, I definitely need to turn the light on in here if I'm going to read all of this. So your kid will probably be okay, but you as the adult, especially if you're one of those older parents, you're going to be like, hang on a minute. Light.
My husband, who does that thing where he like has to move the thing closer and further away with space, and I mock him for it.
I know. And then like suddenly one day you're like, oh, damn, it's me too.
Yeah. Hey, I paid a lot for laser eye surgery. It's been like a decade and I'm still going strong.
Yeah. I have never really needed glasses. It's going to happen at some point, right? Like basically every adult now needs glasses now that we're living past the age of 50, but I'm not there just yet. Though I will say, so if you're watching us, this will give you a good idea. This book has a lot more of like the extra text on almost all of the pages. So keep that in mind. So I did, as often happens with us, I did a different type of notes, right? The books are like 25 pages each. And in this one, page 2 and 3 starts out with like a super kind of basic high level, like pretend play and personification of like, the wind and the earth. And like we made these things like humans. And then the next spread moves on to, how do you pronounce that? Animism? I think
Sure.
so. Animism, which is basically like thinking that everything can feel, right? So it's walking you through like how we started and how it's developing over time. Because we didn't just one day wake up and be like, hey, let's imagine that we have gods that think and feel the way humans do. So it goes on to shamanism, which, like fine. And then from there, on the spread that's 8 to 9, I pulled out this quote. I really liked it. So this is in like the rhyming part. It says, we changed spirits into gods. And then a little further down, making them relatable, we assigned them human traits.
Mhm.
And again, I think that this is an example of the fact that the rhyming part is high level enough that you could talk with younger kids about it. And then if you're actually looking at some of the more deeper insights and text, you could go so much deeper and have really interesting conversations. The next spread had another great little quote. So it's on page 10 to 11. It says, as life got easier, our fears changed from present threats to what happens when we die. And then on that page, the additional information talks a bit about Egypt and mummification and things like that. So it really covers a ton of things. The next one I pulled out was on page 14 to 15. It talks about the birth of monotheism in Iran, and it's Zoroastrianism. I had never heard of this. I thought it was pretty interesting, but it talks about this guy who started monotheism, but it didn't continue on because when he passed away, well, at the time when he passed away, it kind of died out, right? Like there were not very many people doing it. It is still a religion now. There are people who follow it, but it did not stay popular. And then it goes on to talk about India and a young prince named Siddhartha who founded a religion. It's just full. It's full of really great stuff. Like I could read the whole book and then you'd be like, that's not really a book club book review. You just read me the book. So I won't do that to you. On page 18 to 19, it talks about how Israelites were split into two nations and ultimately to survive, they united as one, becoming the first monotheism to survive past like the current leaders, right? So when those current leaders passed away, there was a large enough group of people that continued that forward. So I thought that was pretty interesting. On pages 20 to 21, there's this great quote for any of your kids who are into history in like the fun way. It says, when the Greeks and Romans ruled with a brutal iron fist, right? One Jew promised paradise free to all who would repent. And like, oh, that's like such a great way to introduce Christianity, right? Like that's what they're doing. They don't say it up front, but basically like it's this way of being like, and Christianity was born, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, all right, here we go. But it didn't say too much about it, which again, I appreciated, right? Because we're not looking for a book just on Christianity. We're talking about how all of these different religions were born. Each page is kind of like highlighting a different one. Great overview. You could do a ton of in-depth stuff with it. After that, we go on. It talks briefly about Mecca. It does, like Islam and Muhammad are on the page, but it doesn't make it super clear, in my opinion. I felt like it fell a little short here. So if you're doing it, you might want to spend a little bit of time on that because I feel like, especially these days, we really need to do some very intentional education around Islam and Muhammad and things like that. It is not the devil that Christian America would have you believe. On page 24, I thought this was interesting as well, again, because we're in the United States and we're podcasting from that lens. The quote says, he said he's the final prophet, but still new ones come and go. And these pages are specifically mentioning Mormonism and Scientology. And Scientology talks about aliens falling into volcanoes, which Meagan was like, I saw Scientology was like an aliens religion. And I was like, yeah, it is something. There's something about that. So yeah, according to this, aliens falling into volcanoes and something bad happened. And then it ends with some rhyme that kind of goes over several pages, but I just thought it was really good and powerful and helps just kind of set the final tone for what you're going to do with this book after. It says, all the gods we ever praised, all the heavens and the hells, promises of afterlives, are just stories of ourselves. From our earliest concerns, needing rain and food and crops, to our questions, why we're here, where we go after it stops. Gods reflect our governments and our kind and families, our ideas of right and wrong, and our quirks and jealousies. Now, some folks believe in God. Others believe there's two or more. Some don't think there's any, but there's one thing we know for sure. They're a part of our shared past. They bring out our best and worst. So to learn about ourselves, we could study our gods first. And I was like, that's actually a really interesting, right? Because I don't church. My family, we very consciously choose not to church. But the idea that to understand humans and human nature and humanity and where we are, like really so much of that has evolved based on the story of gods over time. And so much of the storytelling that gets passed down is around gods and stories of gods and spirits and things like that. And so, yeah, doing some real deep dive on that kind of stuff, it's a great way to learn about humans and just human history in general.
I thought that was just like a great sample of the writing too, to give you an idea of how rich and deep the writing is. It's just beautiful. Very
Yeah,
well.
it is. It is very well done. I will say I saw there was one page in the book that you reviewed that had real pictures, real photos of mostly kids. Mine has that. It's a bigger spread in the book that I reviewed, and it's lots of these little pictures, real pictures of kids with a sprinkling of adults. In my book specifically, I am a little disappointed in the lack of diversity. I'm going to put that out there. If you're looking at these books, you're reading them with your kiddos, I would maybe bring that up and make sure that you talk about that. I'm guessing for the most part, it's only partially their fault, the publisher's fault. It looks like people got to opt in and provide like it's a real picture of their face that they've, kind of cropped out and put in to look like a group shot. And so the people that they would have used would have been partially limited by their network, but also partially limited by who was willing to participate and have their picture in a book like this. But it's predominantly white.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's worth talking about and noting because we're really big. I'm sure you are too in your family, Meagan, but we're really big on making sure that our books aren't just white, able-bodied characters, because that's not what our family looks like. And we want to make sure, that the media we're taking in reflects the reality of the diversity of our lives. And so, yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I think they're great. I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to the next two.
me too. I'm excited for the evolution one.
Yeah,
Really so good.
evolution will be good. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's it, right? They get recommended all the time. We're trying to do a little bit more of this, like, let's make sure that we're reviewing some of these things with curriculum. We do. But I just feel like there's such a big need. People often say like, oh, this is really great, but then they can't really say why it's really great.
Mm-hmm.
And we know we all have limited time, right? So if we can help you, limited time and limited money. Again, these books are great, but they're going to be, $11, $12 minimum. They're not
Mm-hmm.
really ever on sale. It's not going to be easy to pick them up at like your used bookstore. I don't know if the libraries are carrying them. You could definitely ask your library to get it. I know the wait list at my library for getting new books is really long, and Kindle is not an option. So if we can just provide a little bit of background, a little bit of context, so you know whether or not it's something you would actually be comfortable using and what age to be using it with, it's nice to be able to do that.
Yeah, I like it. Very good. Well, friends, if you enjoy listening to our podcast, we would love to ask you to like, review, share, whatever, follow, all of the above. Whether we like it or not, everything is algorithm driven in this world. And it just helps us reach new homeschoolers, find like-minded homeschoolers, spread our content a little bit further. So if you wouldn't mind to do any of those things, whatever is popular on the platform that you're on, we would greatly appreciate it. So we'll be back next week with 2 more Annabelle and Aiden books. But in the meantime, happy homeschooling.
Yeah, have a great one.